Ever since 2012, when Disney took over Lucasfilm, a lot of fans have been very worried about the future of Star Wars moving on forward from The Force Awakens to The Last Jedi, and even to the rise of Skywalker and beyond. This is Mike Zero. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel for future Star Wars content. Now, obviously, a lot of fans had issues with exactly how Disney treated the Star Wars franchise and exactly where it was going for so many years. Up until now, here we are in 2020, where Disney is making a big change over at Lucasfilm, and they're trying their absolute best in order to reunite the fans, to really bring the fans back together again, to really create a better future for Star Wars overall. And I think that's one thing that really is very ambitious about Disney. You know, this is something that should have been done from the very start, there's no doubt about that. And when you look at everything related to George Lucas, by the way, George at least had a great vision with the prequels. Say what you will about the prequel trilogy, but the prequel trilogy had consistency, in which the Disney Star Wars films, at least I feel, is something that really is lacking of. It really doesn't have as much consistency as George Lucas's films actually had. Now, we do know that the new Disney CEO, Bob Chapek, is changing a lot of aspects of Star Wars as we speak. Bob Iger is currently out as CEO. He's no longer running things over at Disney, like how he was before a couple of weeks ago. However, with that being said, what's really intriguing is that now that both Disney and Lucasfilm are finished with the Skywalker saga, they are focused on their new Star Wars trilogy of films, as well as their new Star Wars universe. It's explained that Disney and Lucasfilm had a very tough production for Episode 9, mainly because of Kathleen Kennedy interfering with the creative choices and decisions for the movie. It's explained that Disney is trying to reunite the fans around the world to bring Star Wars in a better direction. However, during and after the premiere of The Rise of Skywalker, when many interviews were given to the creatives of the film, such as director J.J. Abrams, it's explained that when questioned about George Lucas and his thoughts about the film, J.J. Abrams went on to explain that George Lucas felt very conflicted with the story for Episode 9 at first, and when J.J. first approached George, J.J. explained that at first, George Lucas was not all impressed with how Palpatine was going to return in the movie, and that changes were made between J.J. and George Lucas. George Lucas played a major role in Palpatine's return before the reshoots were actually placed. Now, when questioned about George's stance on Disney handling Star Wars in general in an interview with Bob Iger went on to speak for George Lucas, revealing that George felt like the direction of Star Wars under Disney needed to be more true to the prequels and the originals, and that George was not 100% on board with how Disney was handling the tone of Star Wars. Bob Iger revealed at one point in time that George had expressed that he felt the Skywalkers needed to be more prominent in the story, and that George expressed that even though The Force Awakens highlighted Luke Skywalker at the end, that he had the idea of Luke being the main character in Episode 7 from start to finish, and that Kathleen Kennedy wanted a different route than that. Bob Iger revealed that though George says he thought the films they made were enjoyable, Bob Iger unveiled that George said the films could have been more in touch with his work. So, the thing with Star Wars, absolutely, when we look at George Lucas, he is the man who created everything Star Wars. A lot of fans love what George has done with the original trilogy and even the prequel trilogy. Of course, there is still a lot of fans out there that have issues with episodes 1 through 3. There's no doubt about that. But say what you will about the prequels, they have their moments. You got Darth Maul, you got Dooku, you got Palpatine in the mix, all these amazing things, right? So, when we look at George, I can honestly understand exactly where he's coming from based on what JJ and Bob Iger expressed of what George Lucas talked about and revealed about Disney's Star Wars, of how George really wanted Luke to be the main character in Episode 7, and that was completely shot down by Kathleen Kennedy, and it's one of the main reasons as to why they did not want Luke Skywalker, because he would take away the attention from Rey, Finn, and Poe. They wanted to focus on these newer characters that would actually be serving as a new generation, if you will, right? So, George Lucas, like I say, this honestly also fits directly in with the statement by Bob Iger that he talked about a couple of months ago about how George Lucas felt betrayed and how George felt like a lot of his work went ignored and that a lot of his work went unnoticed. And I can fully understand that, especially with of course what J.J. Abrams explained about what George Lucas felt about The Rise of Skywalker, of how he did not fully really agree with Disney's Star Wars take on Palpatine's return in Episode 9, and that George had to work closely with J.J. Abrams to really change aspects of that. That most likely is when George attempted to bring in Matt Smith as the Dark Acolyte to be taken over by Palpatine's spirit. And as you all know, the novelization retconned a lot of this, of what's in the final version of the movie, where you do have the older version of Palpatine, who is now just a clone that's being controlled by his own spirit. So, though I do like the idea, they should have explained that to begin with in the actual movie. It just shows us that Lucasfilm didn't really know what they were doing from the very start. So anyways, guys, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, do make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel. I thank you all so very much for the kind support, and I'll catch you guys next time.
From night to moon.